entitled my sharing, The Cross, the Power and the Wisdom of God.
Amen.
The cross, the power and the wisdom of God. And we will ground our discussion on 1 Corinthians chapter number 1 from verse number 18. I read from verse number 18. For the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing. But to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise. The intelligence of the intelligent I will frustrate. Where is the wise person? Where is the teacher of the law? Where is the philosopher of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in the wisdom of God, the world through its wisdom did not know him, God was pleased through the foolishness of what was preached to save those who believe. Jews demand signs, and Greeks look for wisdom. But we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to the Jews and foolishness to Gentiles. But to those whom God has called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than human wisdom, and the weakness of God is stronger than human strength. But to those whom God has called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. May God bless the reading of His word. Amen. I like the commentary in the Africa Study Bible on this verse. It captures the essence of this message in this way. The Africa Study Bible says the message of the cross eclipses miraculous healings. The miraculous treat symptoms of living in the fallen world. But the message of the cross gives God's ultimate response to all sin and suffering. The cross of Christ releases the power of God like no other event. This is what the Africa Study Bible will say in the light of the text we read this morning. We know that in the New Testament, the economy of God centers around the cross. We discovered in some of our sharings the meaning of the hour which Jesus referred to in some of his addresses. When he was at the wedding of Cana of Galilee, and he was asked to intervene when wine had finished in a wedding, he said to his mother, "Woman, my hour has not yet come." And in other words, the things that you are expecting me to do, the interventions that you are expecting me to do, the miraculous, belong to the hour, and that is what should be expected in the time of the hour. And we know as we read the New Testament that the hour there refers to the cross. So the cross contains gracious generosity of heaven, of God. In other words, the cross contains everything that God intended to put at the disposal of humanity. It is the interlocution of the whole heavenly economy. The cross is the epitome of God's revelation. The cross is the crown. I like the slogan of one of the churches back home. The slogan is, no cross, no crown. No cross, no crown. And it is true, because no cross, no salvation. And no salvation, no crown. The things and the miracles, the wonders that Jesus Christ did in the Old Testament prior to the cross were anticipatory, were programmatic, they were trailers, they were appetizers, they were preparatory to what Jesus' cross was bringing. They were shadows, or they were precursors of the main. The cross, when we come to the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians, in our text this morning, is the wisdom and the power of God. This is what the apostle summarizes the whole discourse. The wisdom and the power of God. Remember, Apostle Paul lived quite an extraordinary life. God used him mightily, performed miracles, even raising the dead. Yet when it comes to defining God's power, when it comes to defining God's wisdom, the apostle does not refer to any of the things extraordinary that had happened. The apostle says, the power of God is the cross. The wisdom of God is the cross. I don't know how relevant this message is in our day and era, particularly in Africa. Where do we place value? In ministries, in preachings? Where is our value? We see so many things that are proposed as centerpieces of our ministries. Sometimes it is about the accuracy of the prophecy, or the accuracy of the prophet. How the prophet is so accurate in his prophecies. Those are the things that moves crowds, the things that people find as of value. Nothing near the cross, nothing close to the cross. We put value in these things. But the great apostle, when it comes to defining what is the power of God, what is the wisdom of God, the cross. And you look at this text, the apostle says, the cross seems to be a sign of weakness, especially from the point of view of the Jews. Why? Because from the Jewish perspective, they were waiting for a deliverer. They had been subjected to a number of empires and kingdoms. And at this particular time, they are now under the Roman Empire. And if they are to think about God, they are to think about the Messiah who is to come for the Jews. In their perspective, in their understanding, the deliverer or the Messiah was supposed to come in might. He was good. In their view, he is supposed to be a man of power who will come and destroy the yoke of the Roman Empire and set them free. They were even comparing him, say, to Moses, the miracles that Moses did, the signs that Moses did to deliver the children of Israel from Egypt. So you can't think of Messiah less than what Moses did, frustrating the powers of Egypt to deliver the children of Israel. So for them, the Messiah will be that mighty warrior, mighty leader, who will perform things and get them out of the Roman Empire. So they were looking for a sign. That's why the apostle says, Jews look for a sign. Because to them, that was supposed to be the characteristic of the Messiah. The Greeks looked for wisdom. Because the Greeks believed in philosophies. The collection and the correlation of human wisdom to address human challenges. That's what the Greeks believed in. They believed in the profundity of an idea. There were those ideas which were naive, there were those ideas that were absurd, there were those ideas which were subtle, but they were bright and dynamic ideas. So each time a person comes, they compare, is this a profound philosophy? There were many philosophies. Gnosticism, they believe that salvation comes through knowledge. Epicureanism, the philosophy that emphasized materialism, the absence of pain being the goal of humanity. Stoicism, skepticism were some of the Greek philosophies of the time. So they were looking for a profound philosophy that will, pacify all other philosophies that will be salvation for them. And what does Apostle says? Apostle Paul says, God decided to put aside all the human wisdom. All that, all those philosophies and expectations and profound thoughts and ideas, past, present, and future, God, in His wisdom, decided to put aside all human wisdom. So maybe some of us, or some of you, are looking for a better idea, a better philosophy that maybe will surpass what God has already provided, and are busy trying to compare a better way of salvation, maybe a better religion against the other religion. In God's economy, there is nothing left. God has decided in His wisdom to set aside all human wisdom, past, present, and future. They do not work in His economy, in His plan of redemption. God has set aside all those. The cross then becomes the center stage or the centerpiece of God's modus operandi, God's way of saving humankind. Take away the cross from human life, the consequences are unthinkable. If we, as humanity, all of us, 8 billion humans on this planet, and in the whole of this whole economy, the cross is taken away, then there is no salvation of mankind. There is no hope of mankind. That is the seriousness of the cross. Hence, the Good Friday, being the day Jesus Christ hanged on the cross, is a worth day to sit down and reflect and come to terms with what God has provided as the only means of salvation. We cannot exhaust what God planned in the cross. It takes the lifestyle, the lifespan, it takes the whole lifespan to scrutinize, to benefit, to live, to access, and fully appreciate the benefits of the cross. In fact, it takes eternity. Let's try to sum up the meaning of the cross in few theological terms. And the first term is atonement. Atonement refers to the forgiving or pardoning of sin. Forgiving and the pardoning of sin through the suffering, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. It is a requirement for reconciliation between the sinful mankind and the Holy God. Without the cross, reconciliation of man and God is impossible. Somebody defined atonement as at-one-ment of sinful man and the Holy God. At-one-ment, atonement. The second word that we can look at is propitiation. Propitiation. It refers to the turning away of God's wrath. God in His holiness cannot look at sin. You remember when Jesus was on the cross and He cried, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, because the Father had turned away from Him. God in His holiness cannot look at sin, cannot come close to sin. His holiness makes Him angry, always, ever angry against sin. That's holiness. But the cross, you can imagine, God is holy, correct? Can we all say God is holy?
God is holy.
His holiness sets Him separate from anything sinful. His holiness makes Him constantly angry against sin. His holiness makes Him constantly ready to destroy sin. And we are submitting that the cross pacifies this anger of God. The cross takes away the anger of God. The cross enables God to look at the sinful man. Therefore, take away the cross, you remain with your sin against the Holy God. You are the most pitied human being on earth. Take the cross away from you and between you and God. You are directly faced with the wrath and the anger and the punishment of God. But thanks be to God for the cross. Because the cross enables God to look at the sinful man. The cross enables God to reconcile or to fellowship with mankind. One may say, why do you say the cross enables God? Does God need any enablement? God is powerful. But in his godness, if you take away the cross, God is not able to justify a sinner. Without the cross, if God attempted to justify you, he ceases to be God. Because he will immediately become unjust. Because sin requires punishment. And the cross takes care of that. That is why the cross is the wisdom of God. It is the wisdom of God because in his omniscience, God had figured out that there is need for justice by this sinner. And he dispensed or made an arrangement where the sin of the sinner is paid for, is properly recompensed. And then once that is done, then God can look at the sinner, God can come to the sinner, God can be at one minute with the sinner and remain God. Because sin has met its just punishment through the cross. Amen? Amen. The other way that helps us to appreciate the excesses of the cross is the word expiation. Expiation points to one vital aspect, the removal of sin from the sinner. Propitiation focuses on God and pacifying of God's anger. Expiation focuses on the sinner and sin removed from the sinner through the cross. We all know that the obstacle to relationship between God and human beings is sin. We all know that sin arouses the wrath of God. And this wrath of God is unrelenting. This wrath of God is steady. This wrath of God is constant. This wrath of God is unremitting against sin. But the cross takes away the sin of man and hence enables the holy God and the sinful man to reconcile. The other way that helps us to appreciate the cross and the proceeds of the cross is the word sozo, which is the Greek. The equivalent is salvation. It has the connotation of a widening space. You can imagine a space that was so constricted, squeezed, and then the space is suddenly widened and you can move around. It also has a connotation of deliverance. In the Old Testament, the word is used when God comes to the rescue of Israel and delivers Israel from the bondage or from the oppressor. The Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Hebrew, uses the word sozo for such instances. But the word sozo in the New Testament gets more gravitas, or more gravity, more force, and even a quality meaning of salvation of the soul, body, and spirit. And not only that, but permanent deliverance, permanent salvation of humanity. the last way that we can look at is the word redemption. It is a metaphor for what is achieved through atonement. And in a metaphorical sense, the death of Jesus paid the price, or a ransom price, of a prisoner. The death of Jesus Christ, specifically his blood, is that red wine of Calvary, the redemptive price, the ransom price that God paid for a prisoner, a slave of sin. Can you imagine yourself in the camp of sin? A prisoner of sin, held captive. The price was paid so that the slave, the prisoner, the captive can be set free. That is the power and the wisdom of the cross. In summary, the cross rendered death dead, because the cross atoned for sin. And all this means that the cross reconciled the sinner and God, and hence the power and the wisdom of God. God bless you.
Amen.